Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the XAT preparation strategy session by me and XLRI alumnus. In today's session, we're looking at the entire module across the three sections of XAT and what exactly you need to do to prepare for this exam. So today's session is indeed one of the free sessions on Unacademy. Plus, so the start of the session itself, I request all of you to kindly take out 1-2 minutes of your time and share the session link in various CAT preparation groups and forums. So everybody, please take out a couple of minutes to share the session link in various groups and forums so that more and more people can be a part of today's session. So the onset of the session, I would like to inform all of you that the most important section as part of that is indeed the decision making section, which is why I brought in forward to you the Unacademy Plus XAT decision making plus course. So that unlike in CAT, where the most important section is the dialogue section from a scoring perspective, in XAT decision making. So do make sure that this being a new section as well, all of you are part of the live classes for decision making. In the pin section of the chat window on the right hand side, I've shared the link to decision making course. We've already completed one class, is already done. The second class is tomorrow, Sunday, 8th of December at 10 a.m. So do make sure all of you attending that session live. All of you must make sure that decision making is a new section and you just have 4 weeks of time to prepare. You must master the second. This is going to be the major make or break section in your preparations. So do make sure that all of you are attending every session live. This course is available as part of Unacademy Plus subscription, where you can use the discount code Nilanjan Datta while subscribing. The link has been shared in the chat window on the right hand side. These are the reasons why the decision making course is so very important. Not only are you getting a chance to get mentored by an XLRI alumnus, but we're looking at how you can solve more questions and sets in less time. How do you master the option elimination, smart guessing approaches in decision making where the options are set to be very close? We'll also be looking at ethical dilemma situations, quantitative decision making, analytical decision making. Basically, the entire gamut of decision making shall be looked at in this session, including the best of tips and tricks to master and answer it correctly. So do make sure that all of you attending every session live as part of the decision making course. The next session is Sunday, that is tomorrow at 10 a.m. So before that, all of you are subscribed to Unacademy Plus. Use the discount code Nilanjan Datta while subscribing to get it at a cheaper price. So how do you subscribe to Unacademy Plus? These are your options to subscribe to Unacademy Plus. Ideally, the most recommended for people who are appearing for exams this year is a 6-month subscription. So this will cover you till the end of the GDPI season. That is the time when you're joining a B school. As you know, other than the XAT courses and SNAP courses, we'll also be coming up with the GDPI courses in January onwards. So do make sure if you're subscribed for 6 months until the time you're joining a B school. For those who are preparing for CAT next year, the most recommended and the cheapest option is the 12-month subscription, which would be ideal as well. So either offer a 12-month subscription or a 6-month subscription, which are cheaper on a per monthly basis as well when you subscribe to Unacademy Plus. Remember, respect of which one you go for, the 1 month, 3 month, 12-month or 6-month subscription, if you use the discount code Nilanchan Datta, you'll be getting it at an even cheaper price. It's not just about XAT decision making. The other section is the XAT QADI section, which has the majority of the questions in the paper. So for that as well, we'll be having the no pen paper approach to quants. So all those of you who are targeting scores in quants of 15 plus in XAT, which will give you a very high percentile overall, it's very important that you're attending the sessions where we'll be showing you the 30 seconds approach to quants, how a variety of questions which normally might take you 4 or 5 minutes to solve can be done in 30 seconds. Those of you who attended the CAT quant score boosters must have had a very easy outing in CAT, and now we'll be going with the XAT quant score booster. We'll be discussing the XAT QADI section. This course is also available as part of the same Unacademy Plus subscription. Just make sure that you're choosing a longer duration subscription, like a 12 months or 6 months, and using the discount code Nilanchan to subscribe. Remember, there's one subscription that's giving you access to all these live classes. So how do you subscribe? You first do a subscription plan. So let's say you choose the 12 months. Then in the referral code section, you enter the code Nilanchan Datta. You click on apply. You'll see the code is applied successfully. The prices will reduce here. The discount will apply. And then you can check out. Remember, there's no space between Nilanchan and Datta in the discount code. So remember, 6 months will end of the GDPI season. So all of you subscribe for at least the next 6 months. Also, for your juniors who are preparing for CAT 20, they can go for the 12-month or the 24-month subscription. But make sure that since we are starting with this course tomorrow, Sunday at 10 a.m., or if you're subscribed before tomorrow, Sunday, 10 a.m., using the code Nilanchan Datta. So let's get started with the various sections in XAT and then go one by one on how you should go section by section. So as you know, XAT has recently become online, and now you have approximately the 3 sections over the last 3-4 years. If you look at the paper, it looks like as follows. QADI has been having around 27 questions. Decision making has been having around 21 questions. Var C has been having around 24 to 26 questions mostly. So the total number of questions has been around the 72 to 75 mark. But when it comes to time, you find that you have a lot of time in the paper in different years. The time might be different, but on average, it's around the 170 minutes, which means roughly 3 hours to attempt 70 to 75 questions, which is a very good bargain, given that you're used to attempting 100 questions in CAT in 180 minutes. So the approximate time taken per question available is 2 to 2.5 minutes. So the first thing is, how do you distribute your time? How do you distribute your time between the 3 sections? Ideally, your time distribution should be 50 minutes for decision making, 50 minutes for Var C, and 60 minutes for QA/DI. I know that adds up to only 160, but what this does is it approximately gives you enough time to complete the paper. If I look at QA/DI, around 27 questions in 60 minutes is a job easily doable, given that on Unacademy Plus, all of you are used to solving 30 plus quants questions in 1 hour. In CAT, it will be easy to do 27 questions in 60 minutes. Decision making, 21 questions in 50 minutes is again pretty easy, because it's going to be ultimately not a time consuming thing, but an option based issue. So it will not take too much of your time. The only place where you might stumble a bit is in this Var C section. So in case you're not able to complete the entire Var C section 50 minutes, the additional 10 minutes you may devote to this. Also, as much as possible, ideally look at 50, 60, 50 to be able to complete the paper. Now, let us look at what you need to do at a section by section level. We'll start with the most important section, which is the new section, that is decision making. Now, how do you do decision making? So as you all know, decision making is a new section compared to all the other exams. No other exam that you've been taking at decision making. So here, instead of Diala section, you have DM here. So DM can be broken into 3 broad categories. The first one is those which are based on ethical dilemma situations, where you need to make a choice between ethical approach versus practical approach. The second is where the analytical decision making comes in, where you need to analyze a particular situation and come up with the best possible measure of the action to be taken. It could also include a bit of couple of LR sets, part of the decision making in the analytical section. The third one is the quantitative decision making. So what is quantitative decision making? Quantitative decision making is where you've been given some data and you analyze the data, and it is data driven decision making. So it could be based on probability, it could be based on some statistics that is provided to you. So this is basically not exactly DI. The difference between DI and this is, in DI you calculate the actual values. Here it is not about calculating the actual values. Here it is understanding the trend and then taking a decision on the basis of that. So DI is calculating the actual values. This is more of the values are given to you, or maybe you might need to play a little bit around with the numbers. But after that, it's not about the exact value. It is more about understanding implications of that value. So now, in decision making, the biggest challenge that people face are with the options that are there in the paper. So usually, if you look at that in the last few years, the biggest challenge that you'll find is various institutes come up with different answers. So that gets over. Every year you'll find different institutes come up with different answers, especially when it's a pen paper model, and students get confused at what exactly is the right answer. So this is where you've got to be very careful about the fact that in decision making, since accuracy is going to be low, you have to attempt all questions. So decision making, you don't have a choice but to attempt all the questions in 50 minutes to make sure that you're getting at least 14, 15 correct out of 21. Because remember, accuracy in decision making is not at all in your hands. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is, yes, understanding what kind of answers XLRI wants in various questions is very important, and that is exactly what I'll be discussing over the next 5 minutes. That is, what kind of options, answers does XLRI want in decision making, so that all of you can come up with the right answers in each case whenever you're confused between the options. So let's start with the first one. The first thing, and this is one of the most important things that is there in decision making, and this is where most people tend to make a mistake. Your objective decision making is to choose the most practical and feasible solution. However, the mistake that most people make is choosing an ideal solution. An ideal solution is not the way forward. So your objective should always be most practical and feasible, and the second should be most profitable solution. So remember, your objective should be twofold. Choose the most practical one, which can be done possibly and feasible and profitable. It is not the most ethical decision. A lot of you have this misconception that decision making is all about choosing the most ethical decision. No, it isn't. It is not about a most ethical decision. It's about being practical and feasible and choosing a most profitable solution. Let us look at an example of what is called practical and feasible solution. So I'll give you a couple of examples. What I mean by why I'm saying practical and feasible versus not the most ethical solution. So 2 years back, we had the exam XAT 2018, which was the first time XAT went online. And that year, I'm sure those of you who took XAT that year or must have read reviews of that year would be knowing that what was happened was there were two parts to the paper. The first part was the regular part, that is Var C, decision making, and QADI. The second portion was GK plus essay writing. So what happened in that paper was that if there were around 1 lakh people who appeared for the exam, and since it was happening online for the first time, some of the centers, there were server issues. There were server issues in some centers, whereby what happened was section P1 was impacted for around 2,000 students. For around 2,000 students out of the 1 lakh students who took the paper, paper 1 was affected negatively because of the server issues in certain centers. However, when it came to paper 2 or part 2, either GK or essay, they were totally unprepared, when the servers were continuously getting refreshed when you're submitting your essay, because of which part 2 was affected for around 10,000 to 15,000 people across the country. So the moment that happened, what happened was that very night and the next couple of days, everybody who has taken XAT, around out of 1 lakh people who took XAT, around 40,000, 50,000 people started complaining, asking for a re-exam. Why? Because everybody was like, there was some server issue or something was not happening during the exam, and so on. So guess what XLRI did? And this is exactly a classic example of decision making. Guess what XLRI did that year? And this actually happened in XAT 2018. There was a lot of hue and cry, a lot of posts on social media asking for a re-exam. Around almost half the people who took the exam were asking for a re-exam. The question is, what do you think XAT did or XLRI did? Any suggestions? You can use the chat window to let us know your suggestions. What do you think XLRI did in such a situation? Do you think there was a re-exam for everybody? Do you think there's a re-exam for everybody? Note, everybody was asking for a re-exam. So some of you, the most ideal solution seemed to be re-exam. In fact, a lot of you were assuming that there will be a re-exam because that is the most ideal level playing field for everybody. But that is not a practical decision. That's ultimately a loss-making decision, having to have double the cost in terms of logistics and having the exam again. And plus that will push across all the timelines going forward, releasing admit cards again, blocking dates, getting exam centers again. It's not a pen paper exam. It would have been a sheer waste of time and a process that would get unnecessarily delayed. So what they did was no re-exam for everybody despite people asking for it. Instead, what they did was they conducted an inquiry into every exam's server performance, and they found that only in 3-4 centers, that is 2,000 people, were only affected in paper 1. Also note, paper 1 is only important for the calls. For calls, paper 1 is only required. Paper 2 was not important for the calls. So what it did was they had a re-exam only in these 3-4 centers for these 2,000 people. So they already created the scores and the calculation for remaining 98,000 people. They just had to conduct the exam in these 3-4 centers for 2,000 people, and they got done with the process with maximum delay of 3-4 days only, instead of a 2-3 months delay in having a complete re-exam. That is the example of a practical and feasible decision. So you cannot just say one fine day, no, I'll conduct a re-exam for everybody, irrespective of who all got affected, not affected, because that is an ideal solution. Because remember, there's the cost issue to it, there's the timeline issue to it. You cannot compromise on all of this. It is not about the most ethical approach. It is about the most practical, feasible, profitable solution. Similarly, so when I was conducting the last year, the GDPI season, there was a burning topic last year in the month of January, February, and that was on Hardik Pandya and KL Rahul. A lot of you people who are especially B school aspirants had the opinion at that point of time that Hardik Pandya and KL Rahul should be banned from international cricket forever. Again, that is being idealistic and not practical. Remember this. The fact that they were allowed back into the Indian team, their contribution to the World Cup and so on is something which every Indian was happy about. Nobody is disappointed that Mumbai Indians won the IPL last year because Hardik Pandya played. No. So the idea is you've got to keep too much of idealism outside and you've got to look forward. Having said that, yes, a bit of a punishment, sending a message, that is fine. But the solution is not indefinite ban. So you've got to look at practical solutions, practical decisions which will go forward and help you achieve your ultimate goal without compromising on what is the ultimate thing for India was still winning the World Cup, making sure that they have the best playing 11. And that is where both of them had to feature. So I hope these two examples are clearing out the concept of what I mean by most practical and feasible solution and not the idealistic solution. You've got to strike a line between what is required versus being over idealistic. The third one is take a decision which is fair for all stakeholders and players. So you need to understand who are the various stakeholders who will get impacted by that decision and take a stand accordingly. The more important stakeholders will obviously need to be prioritized, but you cannot negatively impact others. For example, if you're setting up a factory somewhere and you want to displace people, you've got to ensure that you're giving those people an alternate home or an alternate livelihood option. You cannot just focus on your profit and say that no, my factory's profit is just displacing the people and getting done with it. No, you need to ensure that your decisions at the same time are not anti some other people or negatively impacting other stakeholders and players. So while profit and practical and feasible solution is the most important thing, you've got to also ensure that all stakeholder needs are taken care of. So you basically need to look at a balanced decision. The fourth one is no extreme solutions. Extreme solutions is like the one I gave you. People are complaining about exam, so re-exam. People are complaining about these two cricketers, so ban them indefinitely. So you cannot take extreme solutions. You've got to take well thought of decisions. The other thing is no status quo to problems. For example, if you know that there is something wrong that is happening, it's expected that you mark an option which is trying to address that wrong, not options which totally say ignore what is happening and let it go as it is. Status quo is definitely not the way you should be marking options in decision making. Any questions thus far? So Jayesh, as part of the that decision making course, that is tomorrow Sunday 10 a.m., we have a session on ethical dilemmas. So where we'll be looking at a few questions from XAT previous years on ethical dilemmas. So do make sure that you're attending that session at Sunday at 10 a.m. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window on the right hand side. The next thing that is important is having a mid to long term focus. Now, what is meant by mid to long term focus? You cannot just look at what is an immediate thing, immediate short term gains. You've got to look at whether it is good from your long term perspective. For example, you might have seen that often companies going out of the way doing things for the sake of their brand value. Remember, brand value of the company is more important than short-term profits. So it's not that just to boost this year's profit, you'll try and do something unethical. It's more about ensuring that your company's brand value is intact so that your long-term basis, your relations with the stakeholders are in place. So make sure that your relation with various stakeholders are in place in the long term. You're not doing anything which impacts your clients. So even if that involves a bit of short-term losses, that is fine. You might have seen often what companies do is an appeasement policy. What is that? In case a customer has had a negative experience, then they are usually given some gift vouchers or something so that the next time they have a pleasant experience. Again, the idea is it might be a short-term loss-making decision, but you're able to retain back that customer, which will be a good thing going forward. So always look at decisions with a mid to long term focus. A very simple example of this: few years back in IPL, KKR had a decision to take on Russell when he was banned. And he was banned for a year, which meant on a short term basis, they should have released him for the auctions. Correct? On a short term basis, the easiest option was to release him for the auctions, but they did not do that. Why? Because in case they did that and they had to rebuy them after 1-2 years, the cost would have been huge. And so that is why the idea was keep him for that 1 year, take his cost, but eventually you're reaping the benefits of having an Andre Russell in your team. So again, it's always a mid to long term focus that you have on certain players. You'll sometimes find that a few players have injuries during the league, but they do not replace them. Again, the same reason. Because they want to look at it from mid to long term focus, that player can become handy later on. The next thing is focus entirely on option elimination and what's given. What do you mean by what's given? So in the question, they'll give you an objective of the question. So for example, let's say there has been a crime committed and A is the person accused. So the question is asking which of these will acquit A of the crime. It means you mark an option which is good for A. It doesn't matter whether you think A is guilty still. Your objective now is to look for that clue which will believe A is not guilty. So always go with the objective of the question. The objective of the question is which of these will most likely show that A is guilty. Then again, definitely go with which of the options is most negative for A. If the question is objective is which of the following will acquit A of the blame, then go for the one which is most lenient on A. So focus on the objective of the question as well. The final point. So after all these priorities are done, your last priority is not compromising on ethics whatsoever. What does it mean? This is I'll explain to you what I mean here. So let's say you've got 5 options in decision making, out of which, let's say from a profitability and practicality standpoint, let's say the best decisions are A, D, and E in that sequence. But let's say from an unethical standpoint, you end up finding that A and B are unethical decisions. And the most ethical decision is, let's say, C, then D, then E. So can anybody tell me in such a situation which option will be the right answer? If basis of profitability and practicality, your option sequence is A, D, and E. Unethically, A and B are unethical. Ethically, the most ethical is C, then D, then E. In that situation, which of the options will be your right answer? The poll has been made active. You can use the poll to answer. Remember, the priority is always profitability and practicality. So you look at the options here. The best option is A. Now the question is A unethical? A is unethical. So strike out A. You will not go for an unethical option. Your next best profitable and practical option is D. Is D unethical? No. D is not unethical, which means your right answer is D. Note, your right answer will not be C just because C is the most ethical option. No. That is not the way it works. Your objective is still look at every company standing for profit and for increasing the shareholder value. So that is your primary objective without resorting to unethical practices. The fact that D does not resort to unethical practice is good enough. It need not be the most ideal or the most ethical solution. Is this example clear to everybody? So this is what you need to do for decision making. Every time any decision making question, go by this priority sequence as follows. Also, make sure you're attending every decision making session. The next decision making live session is tomorrow, Sunday at 10 a.m. The link has been shared in the chat window on the right hand side. And since the session will be conducted by me and XLRI Alumnus, I'll be teaching you exactly why XLRI prioritizes a particular option over another. The next thing that we'll be talking about is the next section that we'll talk about is indeed the XAT QA-DI section. So unlike in CAT, what they've done is they've merged the quants with the DI. So usually out of the 27 odd questions, you'll be getting around 20 in quants and 7 in DI. 7, 8 in DI. Maybe we might just go by 18, 19 in quants. So the broad idea is attempt more of questions in quants. The main reason for that is you'll not get stuck anytime in the paper. The problem with DI is there's always this likelihood that somebody gets stuck in the DI section in a particular passage or in a particular set, and thereby they end up wasting a lot of the valuable time. Whereas in quants, this thing will never really occur. Also, it's important that you're looking at the 2 minutes per question approach. That is to ensure that every 2 minutes you progress further with a question. Remember, you have 60 minutes for the section. The most important topics are still going to be arithmetic followed by geometry. So it's very similar to CAT. Important topic will still be arithmetic followed by geometry that you need to focus on. Now, the thing about XAT is in XLRI, you have two programs. One is the BM, one is the HR program. So the QADI section is the only section where if you look at XLRI, BM and HR, the cutoffs are very varying. So since you asked for it, Arpita, about the cutoffs, so the difference between the BM and HR cutoff in general across the last few years is something like this. In Var C, the cutoffs are around the 6.5 to 7 mark. In decision making, the cutoff is around the 7 to 8 mark. The difference happens in the QADI section. For BM, the cutoff is around 10 in HR, the cutoff is around only 7. So remember, in the HR program, the quants cutoff is much less. It's around the 70-75 percentile mark, whereas in BM, it's around the 85 to 90 percentile mark in quants. The QADI is a major difference between BM and HR as far as cutoffs are concerned. So any questions, Arpita, you have? That does have sectional cutoff, and the sectional cutoff are reasonably high. In decision making, the cutoff is around 80 percentile. QADI is around 90. VRC is around 70-75 for BM. For HR, again, it is around 75 VRC. Decision making is around 80. QADI is around 70 percentile. So are we every session live as part of the XAT Quants Score Boosters? In fact, today itself, we are having a XAT Quants Score sessions where I'm showing how every question can be done in less than a minute. In fact, 80% of questions will be able to be done in less than a minute, whereas you have around 2 minutes time available for most questions. A lot of questions can be done using the 30-second approaches. The broad idea in the QADI section is to only do as minimum calculations as required, and if you're solving all 27 questions, you can easily end up getting 21, 22 correct. Even if you have 5-6 wrong answers, you still end up getting a raw score of 20 in quants. A raw score of 20 in quants means that the overall percentile will be very, very high. The moment you're scoring 20 in quants, even if you score around 13, 14 in decision making and around 10, 11 in verbal, you still end up getting in the 44, 45 mark. So that is all you need to do. So attempting 27 questions is a must in QADI. So do make sure you're attending every session as part of this course. So Avi, the good thing about HR is in HR, the QA cutoff is low. The QA cutoff is low, which means you have a lot of relaxation if you're aiming for the HR program compared to the BM program where the QA cutoff is considerably high. And the reason is very simple, because in the HR program going forward, you will not require too much of quants, applications, and concepts compared to the BM program where you have finance, you have operations, and so on. So if you're looking at so it depends on what score you're looking at. If you're looking at a score of around 10, which will definitely clear your HR cutoff, then what you can do is just pick your areas. Look back at your CAT dashboard. See, I'm sure you've taken your CAT mocks, a lot of CAT mocks this year. Look back at your CAT dashboard and see which are those topics where you've had a good success rate. So for example, let's say time and work, you've had a good success rate. So you see a question on time and work, attempt that. So just pick your areas and attempt questions. So even if you pick up 60% of your syllabus as the areas where you have a decent rate of success, that is around 17 questions, 16, 17 questions out of 27. Then also what happens is you can easily end up getting 12 correct, which means a raw score of more than 10. The other thing for everybody, for people like Avi, that exam is more suited than CAT. Why? In CAT, the problem is if you're not good in QADI, if you're not good in quants, then this section goes. Also, this section goes. At the moment you're down by 2 sections, it is very difficult to make up. Good thing about XAT is, for those of you who are weaker on the quant front, there is only one section QADI, and that too for HR, the cutoff are pretty low. It's only 7 out of 27 that you need to get. The other two sections, VAR C, is verbal oriented. Decision making is also mostly verbal oriented. The only portion which in decision making, where is the quantitative decision making, is where it might be more data driven. So if you are that kind of a person who's more comfortable with verbal, make sure that you're going through the caselet based decision making, that is the ethical dilemma situations and analytical decision making. You're avoiding the quantitative decision making questions. So we avoid the quantitative decision making questions, solve more of the ethical dilemma and the analytical decision making questions in DM and in QADI. Just cherry pick your 60% areas and attempt questions from those areas. Also, I hope you're attending every session live as part of the Quants Score Boosters for XAT. Offer a 6-month subscription plan which will cover you till the GDPR season, and subscribe using the discount code Nilanjan Datta, but do it before Sunday, tomorrow 10 a.m. because tomorrow 10 a.m. we have the next decision making session. Any questions? Anybody on QADI? So always attempt more of questions in QA than in DI. With DI, the risk of getting stuck in questions is very high. So anybody, any questions on QADI? Okay, LOD. Level of difficulty. Around 8-10 years back, the level of difficulty was around 3. Then it reduced to 2.5. In recent years, the level of difficulty of QADI in XAT is around 1.5 to 2, which means it is reasonably doable. Basuda, for the decision making section, I've shared the link to that decision making plus course. So do make sure you're attending all the sessions as part of the XAT decision making plus course. So subscribe before tomorrow 10 a.m. So preferably subscribe immediately using the discount code Nilanjan Datta. So DI is mostly data driven. DI is data driven, where they'll either give you a table with insights or they'll give you some charts. Usually they'll give you either a table or charts. It is not exactly the logic based DI types. No, it is not exactly logic based DI. So that should make the job a little easier for you all compared to logic based DI, which is always a lot more risky and challenging. Let's move to the other section, which is the Var C section. So in Var C section, your approach should be very similar to what I said for IIFT. What is that? Remember, all questions are the same weightage, and on a time front, if I look at a time front, VA questions take much less time compared to an RC. So the aim is attempt all VA questions, and then attempt 1 or 2 RC passages, and in that sequence. So the basic idea is, if you are leaving out anything in VRC, it can be 1 RC you can leave out, but the rest, entire VA must be attempted, because remember, VA is where you can go quicker on your questions. Arpita, are you talking of CAT or XAT? In CAT, 18 marks in VRC is not enough. So the other thing that you got to keep in mind is the difference between CAT and that is that in CAT you only had RCs having 70% weightage. Here the VA has more weightage, and you've got to look at various things like fill in the blanks is a very scoring area in VA. So make sure that you're acquainted with the fill in the blanks things. Then things on parts of speech, grammar related questions, idioms, synonyms, antonyms, so words based, vocab based, and so on is also important from XAT. So in XAT, reviving your grammar would really help a lot. Sentence correction and all is also important in XAT. Obviously, parajumble and all is still there, but these are also areas which you've got to look at in the VRT section, especially things like fill in the blanks and grammar, which is very easy. One more thing, when it comes to RCs, as I said, Pratik, attempt more of VA questions, less of RC questions. Also, make sure you're not wasting time in choosing questions. Just keep attempting everything. You have to attempt. Ultimately, like I said, you expect to attempt all 26 questions in VRC because you have around almost 50 minutes plus. Make sure that you are attempting all VA plus almost all the RCs. Some of you have this notion of this poem-based RC concept which has been happening in a few years in XAT. Do not overhype it. There are hardly 2 questions which come in the poem-based RC. So it's better that you focus on the other areas with the most scoring. Also, there's no difference between a poem-based RC and a passive RC from the perspective of marking right answers. So don't bother yourself too much on whether it's a poem-based RC or a passage-based RC. But I already discussed about it, I'll repeat it. QADI section, 60 minutes. VARC section, 50 minutes. DM section, 50 minutes. After that, whatever time is remaining, you can do whichever one, wherever you're lacking. Whichever one you have not section, you have not finished, you can attempt the remaining time. But the minimum is 60 in QADI, so that is enough to attempt 27 or 28 odd questions in QADI. 50 minutes is enough for decision making. VRC, the rest time. Whatever time remains, you can allocate to a remaining final RC in the VRC section. All VA questions must be attempted in VRC. Max of 1 RC passage can be left, and that to the one with less number of questions. So the broad objective is, in total, you're looking to attempt 70 plus questions. How many you want to get right? Only 50 correct. End up getting 20 wrong, you'll still end up with a raw score, which is around the 44, 45 mark. Imagine, even after getting 20 wrong answers, you still end up getting 45 marks. Also, are you aware of the fact that for unattempted questions, in some years, you have been having some negative marks. So the idea is attempt almost every question. Firstly, the advantage is it's a +1 minus 0.25. Unlike in CAT, it's not a 3:1 ratio. It is a 4:1 ratio. And Upar say there's no negative for unattempted questions also. So it is a double whammy for each and every one of you. So attempt all the questions. Even if you end up getting 50 correct, 20 wrong, which is a terrible accuracy, given the decision making is challenging from an accuracy standpoint, you still end up with an excellent percentile. From current affairs standpoint, last 6 to 12 months. Having said that, GK is not just current affairs. There are a lot of other things, components also involved in GK. So there will not be only current affairs coming in the GK section. Difficulty level I already showed. It's usually like this. Decision making and QADI are on the moderate side. VRC is slightly difficult. In decision making, the bigger worry is options are confusing, which is why I came up with this prioritizing sequence on how you go about marking options in XAT decision making so that you can maximize your scores. Also, in addition to this, just make sure that all of you are attending every session live as part of the XAT decision making course on Unacademy Plus. The next session, as I mentioned, is on Sunday tomorrow at 10 a.m. So do make sure before that, all of you subscribe to Unacademy Plus. The link has been shared in the chat window on the right hand side. So do make sure, every one of you, that you're making the most of the next 4 weeks to XAT 2020. The exam is on Jan 1st, Sunday. So do make sure that going forward, every session you're attending live. So as you know, every Sunday at 10 a.m., as well as on weekdays at 10 p.m. on weekdays as per the schedule, you have the decision-making course. We already completed one class. The second class is tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please do not miss out on any further class. Otherwise, it'll get very difficult for you to cope up with the decision-making section. Do not leave things or delay things until the last week to prepare for the decision-making section. Make the most use of the next 4 weeks, because remember, this can drive your percentile up by a huge margin. And given that you have some top B schools like XLRI, FPJN, and so on in sight with the XAT exam, it's very important to take it seriously right from now. So do make sure that everybody's attending every session live as part of decision-making live classes. The link I've shared in the chat window. It's available as part of the Unacademy Plus subscription. Use the discount code Nilanjan Datta while subscribing. Remember, in this course, in Conductive X-ray, Alumnus will be teaching you exactly the kind of approaches that XLRI is seeking in the decision-making section, how you prioritize options and so on across the entire decision-making spectrum. Also, you have, in addition to that, the XAT QADI course, which is also available as part of the same Unacademy Plus. So remember, it's one subscription which is giving you access to each of these live classes, including the Snap LR sessions as well. The Snap LR sessions is tonight at 10 p.m. So make sure you're attending every session live. Here we'll be teaching you the no pen paper approach to the QADI section, how you can solve a variety of questions in the 30-second approaches and getting it done faster. And even if you missed out on this approaches in the CAT quant scope of the sessions and you've ended up with a raw score of 10-15 marks short, make sure in XAT at least you're not repeating the same mistake, because this is your last chance to overturn your preparations for this exam season. So remember, it's all available as part of a single subscription. Be subscribed for the next 6 months, at least to the GDPI season. If you're looking at exams this year, looking at exam next year as well, then go for the 12-month subscription. For CAT-20, these are your cheapest options as well on a per monthly basis. Plus, if you use the discount code Nilanjan Datta while subscribing, you get these subscriptions at an even more cheaper discounted price. So this is where you go and you enter your discount code. So you select your subscription plan. You'll ask you for a referral code. You enter your code. You click on apply. It applies successfully, and then you can check out at a cheaper price. Remember, discount code of Nilanjan Datta, then the space for Nilanjan and Datta in the discount code. But subscribe before tomorrow, Sunday, 10 a.m. I want to see all of you attending at the decision-making live classes. At the end of 4 weeks, all of you are smiling on XAT exam day. So stay subscribed for the 6 months and inform your juniors about a CAT 12-month, 24-month subscription. Remember, tomorrow, Sunday, 10 a.m., we'll be connecting again for the decision-making session. On that note, thank you, everybody, and happy learning.